The night of my 65th birthday should have ended with laughter and cake. Instead, I stood on my own porch, key in hand, and realized the door had been dead-bolted from the inside. My daughter-in-law, who once called me Dad, had locked me out of my own home. I used to think a house could tell time. The front porch boards creaked at 7:30, when I liked to step outside with coffee. The air vents hummed at 9, right before the sun touched the maple tree. And the old grandfather clock in the hall, the one I rebuilt after my last shift as a firefighter, chimed the hour like a faithful heartbeat, steady, reassuring mine. Before we continue, please share from where you're listening me and hit the subscribe button. On the night of my 65th birthday, that heartbeat stuttered. I stood on my own porch with a trash bag dangling from my hand, the last of the party plates clinking together, and I heard it, the clean, final click of the deadbolt from the inside. The porch light flickered twice, once like a wink, once like a warning, and then settled into a weak halo that made the doormat look smaller than it should have. At first, I told myself I was being dramatic. People bump locks by accident. Kids twist knobs. Parties end messy. I set the trash bag down by the step, wiped my palms on my jeans, and turned the handle. It didn't budge. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. No laughter. No clink of dishes. Just distant music, thumping from a speaker in the den, and the low hum of the refrigerator. A house learns your sounds. It also knows how to hide them. Ethan, I called, trying for casual. Hey, bud, open up. Your old man forgot his keys. I hadn't forgotten my keys. They were in my pocket with the small brass firefighter charm I carried for luck. I just didn't want to try them yet, because I already knew what I'd find. A lock turned from the inside. The kind of turn you make when you want someone to know they're on the wrong side of the door. I knocked again. Vanessa. My voice came out flatter than I wanted. Everything okay? Silence held for a beat longer than manners allow. Then the music in the den clicked louder. Footsteps padded across the hallway. They stopped on the other side of the door, so close I could have laid my palm right where a shoe print would be. I pictured Vanessa standing there in her silver birthday heels, her choice, not mine, holding her breath, as if breath itself were a secret. I breathed in through my nose, the way we did when smoke curled under a door and we needed to taste the trouble before we opened it. I found my voice steady. You two all right? Kid sleeping. A long second ticked. Then a voice, polite to the degree that politeness becomes insult, floated through the wood. We're fine, Dad. Good night. The tone wasn't my son's. It was warm honey poured over ice. Vanessa, I said, the deadbolt's on. It's late, she answered, still sweet. Everyone's tired. You should get some rest. In my own house, I said, before I could help myself. 3 heartbeats passed. Of course, she replied. After we finish up, we'll take care of cleanup. Please, just head to bed. We don't want you tripping over anything. I looked down at the porch boards I'd nailed in one summer with Ethan, sweating and laughing and drinking lemonade his mother used to make too sweet. The boards didn't look like a trip hazard. The only hazard, if you asked me, was a voice that turned a father into a guest. I kept my temper. A firefighter learns to put water on flames, not gasoline. All right, I said evenly. I'll give you a minute, but don't lock me out. No answer came. The footsteps retreated. The music bumped louder again, as if volume could cover the thud of a human heart. I could end the moment, I knew, with the turn of my key. I could be the man who built the door and could open it. But something stopped me. Pride, maybe. Or the memory of a folder in my study that hadn't been there before guests arrived. A folder with language like property transfer draft and grantor and occupancy rights. Firefighters don't just smell smoke. We read it like a letter. And that folder was smoke. I set the decision aside for now and walked the porch, letting boards talk to me. The floor had a tiny rise by the second pillar, always did, so your foot would lift a fraction and come down on trust. Houses are like people, I've learned. They tell you where the soft spots are, if you listen. and they stand up when you lean on them, if you've earned it. A chill trickled under my collar. The air smelled of charcoal and the strawberries the grandkids had crushed underfoot on their way to the swing set. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked twice and went quiet. I lifted the trash again and carried it to the bin, letting the lid thump with a hollow sound that echoed down the driveway. When I returned, I tried the knob one more time. Still locked. "Okay," I said into the night. To no one, and to my father, and to the house that had held us all. "I hear you." I sat on the top step, let the porch light paint my shoes, and thought about how the evening had begun. How a clock can sound like a friend until you realize it's counting down. The trouble started with the cake. Not the cake itself. Vanessa had ordered a nice one from a bakery downtown, fondant smooth as ceramic, tiny sugared flames from my years in the service. It was almost too pretty to cut. We sang well, most of us. Vanessa didn't care for singing. She'd said earlier with a scrap of a smile, "It feels dated, doesn't it?" But my grandkids sang like they had invented the song. I blew out all 65 flames in one breath, just to prove a point to nobody in particular. The first slice is a small ceremony in my house. When my wife, God rest her, was alive, she always gave it to the person who had done the quietest good that week. The neighbor who mowed our lawn when my back hurt. The dishwasher who stayed late to fix the leak. The rookie who showed up early to wash the rig. Tonight I held the knife and felt that old impulse rise. To community, I said. To the small good. I set the first slice on a paper plate and handed it to Nora, my neighbor, who had brought over her famous potato salad and a green plant with a ribbon around it. Vanessa laughed lightly. "Cute," she said, in a tone you use for toddlers and dogs. "But why not modernize? Dad should give the first slice to the future of the family." She gestured at herself. To leadership. It was a joke, but not really. The room did that thing where sound hangs for a second, waiting to know whether it should come back louder or crawl under a couch. I smiled, the way you smile when a bee decides you're a flower. Nora's been leadership around here since before I learned where the breaker box was, I said. People chuckled, the right kind this time, and the tension fell by a half-inch. Vanessa's eyes didn't. We moved on. Ethan manned the grill outside, flipping burgers in the fading sun, sleeves rolled, the same easy grin he'd had since Little League. He was always handsome, my boy. His mother's eyes, my jawline, a way of walking that said both I'm here and I'm not in your way. He came in with a plate piled high and a smear of ketchup on his wrist. Vanessa wiped it off with a napkin like he was 6. "You're dripping, honey," she said. "Try to be neat today." He winked at me, a wink that used to mean ignore it, Dad, and set the plate down next to the buns. The kids raced past, one with a foam sword, one with a paper crown that read King Pop in crayon. I put the crown on and made a show of bowing to their laughter. I took photos. I pretended I didn't notice Vanessa moving through my kitchen like a realtor, opening drawers as if cataloging them. I pretended I didn't see her angle her phone quietly toward the hallway where the framed deeds hung, first for the lot, then the house, then the paid-off mortgage, each in the same black frame like family portraits. "Hey, Dad," Ethan said later, catching me in the doorway to the study. "You okay? You've got your counting exits face on." He had that look that sons get when they borrow their father's toolbox, amused, a little cautious, secretly proud. "Habit," I said, shrugging. "Smoke that isn't there." He laughed and clapped my shoulder. "You deserve a night with no smoke." I took him at his word. For a while. It was later, after the sun slid down behind the maples like it was too tired to stay, that I slipped into the study. Old habit again. Every party needs a moment of quiet, where you touch base with yourself and make sure you're still the same person you were when it started. The study smelled like lemon oil and paper. The desk lamp cast a pool of light, like a small stage. And there, center stage, sat the folder. It was manila and ordinary, which is the cruelest kind of disguise. I don't snoop. A firefighter knows that some doors you don't open unless someone's life is behind them. But the corner of a page had slipped out, and I saw the words, black as a bruise, quitclaim deed. The hairs on my forearms lifted. Looking for something, came the voice. I turned. Vanessa leaned against the doorframe. One hip slanted the way people do in magazine ads to sell you on the idea that angles are prettier than truth. She smiled with all her teeth. Her eyes were bright and patient, the kind of patience you use on a child who's about to learn that a stove is hot. Not looking, I said, keeping my tone level. Thinking. About what? She asked, as if she was interested, as if questions didn't have hooks. About how the clock runs faster during parties, I said lightly, and set my palm on the folder. About how a man finds strange paperwork on his desk. Her expression didn't change. Oh, those. She fluttered her fingers. Just some boring legal drafts. Grown-up stuff. Ethan and I are looking at ways to simplify the family's assets. Protection, taxes, all of that. You know how complicated it gets when people retire. When, I repeated. I already retired. She glanced at my hands, at the knuckles that never fully healed right, at the firefighter charm I still carry. Exactly, she said. All the more reason to get things tidy. She crossed the room, took the folder with the light touch of someone plucking lint from a friend's shoulder, and slid it into her tote. Don't worry, she added, sweet as tea. We'll make sure you're comfortable. Comfortable. I've learned that people who use that word often mean quiet. They mean out of the way. Appreciate it, I said. Of course, she said, and tilted her head in the direction of the living room where guests waited. Come on back. They want the speech from the man of the hour. I gave it. I told an old story about the time we saved 3 cats and a terrarium from a basement, which is less heroic than people want but more true. People laughed in the right places. I watched Vanessa watching the room, the way she nodded when people agreed with her, the way she frowned when they didn't. Watching is a skill. It saved my life more than once. As the night thinned and neighbors trickled home with foil-wrapped leftovers, the house settled into that comfortable hush, the post-party tired that makes couches look like promises. We loaded plates into the dishwasher. The grandkids fell asleep in a pile of blankets, with a cartoon still walking across the TV. I carried them to the guest room, kissed their hair, smelled the sugar still on their hands. Ethan hugged me hard in the hallway. Happy birthday, Dad, he said softly. You deserve the world. You're most of it, I told him, and that was true. Take your wife home. Get rest. He hesitated a fraction, as if a small thought tugged at the sleeve of a larger one. Then Vanessa appeared at his side, looping her arm through his. We're fine, she said. We'll finish up. You head on to bed, Dad. We don't want you to trip on anything. There it was again, that word in disguise. I can handle a plate, I said. She smiled. You've handled more than plates in your life. Let someone handle you for a change. Ethan kissed my cheek. We'll be quiet, he promised. In another life, I might have argued. In this one I watched. I kissed my grandkids again. I carried the trash out like a man carrying a flag after a parade. Quiet and proud, and a little sad that the music was over. I reached back for the door, and the music stayed, but the door did not. Now, on the porch, I sat and remembered each moment as if lining up matches to see which one had started the fire. In the yard, a motion sensor light blinked on and then off. A moth ticked against the glass. I took out my keys, rolled the familiar teeth between my fingers, and slid the main house key into the lock. It went in smooth and stopped dead. There's a lesson they teach you early at the station. Panic is the partner of poor decisions. Breathe, assess. Choose the safe path twice before the risky one once. I stepped back. The porch light made a tired ring around me. I could see my own reflection dim and distorted in the sidelight window. A man whose hair had gone gray not from surrender, but from service. A man whose hands had learned both to lift and to let go. I could also see, faintly, the edge of the hallway beyond, the soft glow of the floor lamp I always left on at night. My house was awake. It was just refusing to speak to me. I knocked again, lighter. "Ethan." Footsteps. The deadbolt turned. Just a quarter, then stopped like a held breath. Vanessa's voice, gentle as a bandage being peeled, said, "Dad, please. It's late." "I'm aware," I said. "Open the door." A pause. I heard the whisper of conversation, words too soft to catch. When she spoke again, her tone had cooled by a degree. "We'll talk in the morning. Good night." The bolt turned back into place, conclusive, polished, unhurried. For a moment, my anger rose like a backdraft, sudden, hot, hungry for oxygen. I could have shouted. I could have called the police, a ridiculous image that would have made tomorrow's coffee undrinkable in this neighborhood. I could have used the back door, slid the window by the sink, a latch I'd meant to fix for months. Instead, I sat again, because sitting can be a tactic. You let someone else think they're writing the scene, while you memorize their handwriting. I was not helpless. I was not even alone. The house knew me. The neighborhood knew me. The law knew me, even when it got fuzzy around family. And I knew something else. Earlier that week, I'd had coffee with an old friend, Maggie, who did paralegal work for a firm that handled estate planning. "People do strange things around houses," she told me. "Houses are like mirrors. They show people the parts of themselves they like to keep hidden." Back inside, through the thin glass of the sidelights, a shadow moved. Another. Ethan's voice slipped out, muffled by wood and guilt. "Vanessa, I don't. He's my dad." "Exactly," she said, the consonants crisp. "And you're his son, which means you should be thinking long-term. We're building a family. We can't run a family in a museum. He needs care. He needs stability. He needs to be comfortable." Comfortable. There it was, the third time, like a neighbor's dog that keeps wandering into your yard to dig up the same patch. I looked at the maple tree in the yard, the one we'd planted the year Ethan lost his first tooth. It was taller than the roofline now, and its branches had spread in a way that made the yard feel smaller and kinder. I thought about my wife, and the way she used to say, "The trick to keeping peace is to make sure your pride is on a leash." I let my pride sit. I let my eyes open. I let the night teach me. I stood, stretched my back, and walked around to the side yard. The kitchen window over the sink had been stubborn for months. I'd promised myself, and everyone else, that I'd fix the latch and never did. It was the kind of oversight that can cost you. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's the kind that saves you. The window moved under my fingers, not enough to open without noise, but enough to whisper. I didn't push it. I didn't need to be the man who crawled through his own window on his birthday. Instead, I noted it, the way you note a hydrant on a new block. I traced the line of the foundation with my eyes. I checked the camera above the garage, the little red light blinking a metronome. I made a map in my head the way I always have. Exits, entries, hazards, resources. A good plan doesn't begin with what you want to do. It begins with what is true. Back on the porch, I took out my phone and thumbed a number I know as well as my own breathing. Maggie picked up on the fourth ring. "You do realize normal people are asleep," she said without preamble, voice thick with a yawn. "Normal people aren't locked out of their own houses on their 65th. I said. Maggie's breath sharpened. "Tell me everything." Slowly, I told her, not dramatic, not moaning, just the facts like I was calling in a scene to dispatch. The folder. The camera turned a click toward the hallway. The comments about senior housing. The ownership language wrapped like ribbon around insults. The deadbolt. The sweet voice saying goodnight, like a lullaby for children who weren't me. She listened without interrupting. That's how I knew I could trust her. When I finished, I could hear the sound of typing through the phone, quick and clean. "Okay," she said. "First, breathe. You're not breaking the law by standing on your own porch. Second, you're going to be tempted to do something dramatic. Don't. Document. Take photos of the hallway through the sidelight, if you can. The deed is in your name, correct?" "Paid off," I said. "Framed on the wall." I can see the frame from here. Good. And your will and power of attorney are updated? Updated last year, I said, since the knee surgery. Perfect. Third, tomorrow morning you're going to be at my office at 9. We'll get a hold on any filings that involve your property. If something's already in motion, we'll freeze it. We'll also put your house in a trust with you as trustee and a successor you choose, if you want. That makes transfers harder without your consent. Meanwhile, tonight, do not escalate. Let them think you're rattled. I am rattled, I admitted. Let them think they caused it, she corrected. Big difference. I smiled despite myself. Thanks, Mags. She softened. You're a good man, Tom. Good men have a bad habit of assuming everyone else plays fair. Don't make that mistake again. I hear you. And Tom, yeah, tomorrow, be prepared for, we didn't mean it that way. For tears. For the comfort word. Bring your spine and your paperwork. We'll bring the rest. We hung up. I took 3 photos through the sidelight, blurry but serviceable. The hallway. The way the camera's gaze had shifted toward the deed frames. The edge of Vanessa's tote bag near the study door. I slid the phone into my pocket like a stone you keep because its weight reminds you of gravity. Inside, a door closed. The music went down. The refrigerator hummed. A house tells time. It was telling me the night had turned the corner toward morning, where all plans look either foolish or brave, depending on the quality of your sleep. I rose, turned, and walked to the workshop at the back of the garage. The keypad took my code like a handshake. The motion sensor light blinked on, yellow and kind. I stood in that clean smell, sawdust, oil. The metal tang of tools hung in tidy rows, and let my shoulders drop. Here, I am not a guest. Here, everything is where my hands decided it should go. On the workbench, my latest small project waited. A picture frame made of reclaimed oak, corners cut snug, a channel ready for glass. I had meant to put a photo of my last engine company in it. A picture from the day I rang out and handed my helmet to a kid with eyes too bright to see the future clearly. Next to it sat the old leather logbook I kept after retirement, not for fire calls, but for household maintenance, receipts, notes about warranties, small proof that a man can still keep things from burning by writing them down. I opened the logbook and wrote in careful letters. June 14th, 65th birthday. Deadbolt turned from inside. Folder. Quitclaim draft observed. Witness, self. Photos. Hallway/camera/tote. Call Maggie 9:44 p.m. Plan 9 a.m. meeting. I underlined plan twice. Not because plans always work, but because plans keep you from doing the first foolish thing that feels like relief. I didn't sleep in my bed that night. I slept in the old recliner in the workshop, the one that still smells faintly of my wife's lavender because she used to come out here with tea and tell me to stop sanding after midnight. I left the garage door closed and the inside door cracked, an old habit for airflow. The motion light blinked once, then went still. In the quiet, I could hear the house settle its bones and the faintest rumble of traffic from the highway. I set my phone alarm for 7 and tucked the logbook under my arm like a shield. Before I drifted off, I let myself think of Ethan as a boy, hair damp from the lake, wrapped in a towel I held open for him. I let myself remember his first night home from the hospital, the way his chest rose and fell with such work, like breathing was a hill he'd never climbed before. I let myself remember my promise then, to make this house a place no one could take from him. I realized, lying there with the smell of oak and oil and time, that I had made the same promise in reverse, without knowing to myself. Morning would bring lawyers and language, and a plan that didn't require shouting through doors. Morning would bring the version of me that people sometimes forget exists, the one who knows that fire is just a chemical reaction, and fear is just a story you tell yourself to avoid writing a better one. But before morning, before anything that looked like victory or embarrassment, I had the clean, hard knowledge of a man sitting in his own workshop on the night of his 65th birthday, deciding what kind of father he would be to a son who might be lost, and what kind of landlord he would be to his own pride. I decided at last to be the kind who doesn't panic, who doesn't pound the door, who doesn't let someone else's plan make him forget his own. I closed my eyes. The old clock in the hall chimed too, muffled through walls and wood. The sound of a heartbeat I could still hear, even from here. Somewhere inside, a woman who had called me Dad turned in a bed I'd bought, and a man I loved lay between the person he promised to be and the person he was being asked to become. Somewhere in a guest room, my grandchildren dreamed in the safety of the only house that had ever known their names. And in the workshop, a frame waited for a picture, and a plan waited for morning. When the alarm finally rang, summer light already edged the blinds. I stretched, felt the grit of a hard decision behind my eyes, and stood. I washed my face at the slop sink, combed my hair with my fingers, and put on the shirt that made me look like I had slept in a bed. I tucked the logbook into a canvas bag with my passport, the deed copy, insurance papers, and the file from last year's will update. I added the firefighter charm to my keys the way you put a hand on a friend's shoulder. At the door between the garage and the kitchen, I paused. I could hear the coffee maker burbling on the other side. Vanessa liked her coffee early, black, strong, unforgiving. I pictured her in my robe, pouring into my mug. I smiled. Not because it was funny, because when people borrow your mug, they forget that it still has your fingerprints on it. I didn't touch the handle. Not yet. I walked out the side door into a morning that smelled like possibility and lawn sprinklers. The maple cast a long shadow toward the street, and a newspaper thunked onto the neighbor's driveway. I waved to Nora, who stood on her porch in a bathrobe, hair a polite mess. "Rough night?" she asked, reading me the way only people who have watched you scrape paint off a porch can. "Birthday," I said. "You know how they are. You need anything?" "I've got a 9 o'clock," I said, "but I may need a witness soon." She nodded once, no questions. "I'll wear my good glasses." I climbed into my truck and let the engine turn over. That faithful catch that always sounds like gratitude. I pulled out slow, not because I was unsure of my destination, but because I was sure of something else. A house can tell time, but so can a man. And the time for being a guest in my own life had ended the moment someone turned a lock on me. As I drove, I rehearsed the words I'd use with Maggie, with the bank, with the county clerk if it came to that. I pictured the folder Vanessa had tucked into her tote and the camera repositioned with such care. I pictured my son's face when he realized the difference between comfort and control. I pictured my grandchildren at my kitchen table, eating pancakes from the pan I'd seasoned with decades of Sunday mornings, and I promised them, silently, but as loudly as a promise can be, that this house would still know their names when they were old enough to read them on mail. At the first red light, I glanced in the mirror. The man who looked back at me wasn't the guy on the porch waiting to be let in. He was the one who had spent a lifetime walking into hot rooms and finding the path out. He was the one who'd say to a frightened rookie, "Don't let the smoke tell you where the fire is. Let the heat show you." He was the one who remembered that revenge isn't about shouting. It's about setting things right so loudly that silence becomes a kind of apology. The light turned green. I pressed the gas. The clock on the dash ticked to 8:07. It sounded, to me, exactly like a heartbeat. When I pulled into Maggie's lot at 8:58, the sun was already high enough to turn the hood of my truck into a skillet. The law office sat in a low brick building that used to be a dentist. It still smelled faintly of mint and old magazines, as if justice could be swished around like mouthwash. A fake fern guarded the door. Inside, the waiting room held 2 chairs and a table with 3 neat stacks: estate planning, elder law, and real property. I picked up real property and skimmed bullet points about deeds and trusts, the paper whispering like someone practicing a confession. Maggie opened the inner door before I could sit. No blazer, just rolled sleeves and a pencil stuck through a messy bun like a flag. "You look like a guy who slept in a chair," she said. "Come on." Her office was small, but everything in it looked like it had a job. She slid a legal pad across the desk to me and clicked her laptop awake. "Start with dates and details," she said. "And don't spare me the boring parts. Boring parts when cases." I told her everything. The folder, the repositioned camera, the deadbolt, the word comfortable said with sugar. She typed while I talked, stopping only to ask for times. She asked good questions, the kind you don't think about until someone with a pencil shows you how important they are. "Show me the photos," she said. I handed her my phone. She tapped and zoomed. "That's your hallway. That's your camera. That's her bag near the study." She turned the screen for me to confirm, and then set the phone down between us like a small witness. "Can they move fast?" I asked. "If there's a transfer emotion?" "Faster than you'd like," she said, "but not faster than we can tie their shoelaces together." She spun the laptop toward me. "Here's the roadmap." She'd already titled the document, "Household Protections, Immediate Steps." The bullets stacked like stairs. 1. Urgent title search. Confirm current status. Look for any recorded deeds or liens. 2. Trust formation. Revocable living trust with you as trustee. Successor trustee named. 3. Notice to title companies. Flag any attempted transfers as disputed/fraud. 4. Temporary restraining order if needed. Restrain interference with possessions/records. 5. Preserve evidence, photos, texts, camera logs, witness statements. "You came ready to move," I said. "I've seen this movie," she said. "The trick is to change the ending." She picked up the desk phone. "Jill, put the title search on a rush for Tom's street address. Yes, full chain. And pull the recorder index for the last 30 days. She hung up and started filling blanks in a trust template. "What's your middle name?" "Francis," I said, and she made a face. "Don't look at me like that," I said. "My mother likes saints." "Mine like crossword puzzles," she said. We both got burdened. She typed, read back a paragraph for accuracy, and then looked at me over the screen. "Who do you trust as a successor?" "Someone steady. Someone who won't get starry-eyed at the first shiny claim." "Nora," I said without thinking. "My neighbor. She sees everything and wants nothing." "Perfect," Maggie said. "We'll ask her. If she declines, we slot in my firm as a fallback so there's always an adult in the room." She pointed her pencil at me. "And yes, Tom, you're an adult. But adults get tired. Succession isn't an insult, it's a seatbelt." Her printer hummed. The trust pages slid out warm, neat, official. She clipped them, handed me a pen, and tapped signature lines with the efficient kindness of a nurse finding a vein. "We'll notarize in-house. Jill will witness. You'll sleep better tonight." "I slept fine," I said. "In a shop chair," she answered without looking up. "Sign." I signed. Jill came in, small and brisk, with a notary stamp like a tiny iron. I presented my driver's license. She pressed and rotated the stamp with a satisfying click. "There," Jill said. "You're slightly more bulletproof." Maggie's desk phone rang. She put it on speaker. "Jill," said a man's voice from the back. "Recorder index shows a notice of intent to transfer submitted yesterday afternoon. Unrecorded, rejected for missing initial. Same names you mentioned." My jaw went tight. They tried to file while we were lighting candles. "Rejected," Maggie said, lifting a palm. "That's good news. It means they're sloppy or greedy or both." She glanced at me. "We probably scared them by existing. Fear makes people fast. Fast makes people dumb." "Anything actually recorded?" Jill asked from the phone. "Nothing new," the man said. "Still clean. Title company hasn't touched it." "Thanks, Joe," Maggie said and clicked off. She turned back to me. "Okay, we have a narrow window. We're going to slam it shut." She slid a pre-drafted letter across the desk. "This goes to the major title companies in our county. It puts them on notice that any deed purporting to transfer your house is disputed, and should not be insured without direct verification from you or me. It doesn't stop crime, but it makes it harder to spend the proceeds. What about the door? I asked. What about being locked out of my own kitchen to drink my own coffee? We'll deal with possession next, she said. You live there. You have keys. You have a right to quiet enjoyment that does not include being treated like an intruder. Today, we build the paper fence. Tonight, we start taking your house back the civilized way. And if they won't be civilized? She smiled like someone who knows where the backup hose is. Then we'll use the heavy stream. By 10:30, we'd signed the trust. By 11, Maggie had emailed the notices. By noon, I was at the county recorder's office with a sealed envelope asking them to index a memorandum of trust against my parcel number. The clerk, a man with hair like dandelion fluff, checked my ID and tapped keys with 2 fingers. Okay, he said. Memorandum recorded. Here's your receipt. Want a certified copy? Yes, I said. He printed one, stamped it, and slipped it under the glass like a diner check. I thanked him. He nodded toward my parcel map on his second monitor. Nice corner lot, he said. Good bones. Best I ever built, I said. I walked out into the noon heat with paper proof that the house was no longer an orphan in the legal world. It now had an adult chaperone that wasn't swayed by birthday cake or soft words. I called Nora from the truck. You free at 3? I asked. I have a strange favor. If it involves a casserole, I'm out, she said. But if it involves justice, I'll wear lipstick. It's justice, I said. 3 it is, she said. I drove home with the trust binder on the passenger seat and a pit in my stomach anyway. Paper is strong, but people can be reckless, and recklessness can shatter windows. I pulled into my driveway slow, scanning the house like a scene. No broken glass. No patrol cars. Good. The curtains were open in the living room, a small stage dressed in daylight. I could see the edge of my recliner. The maple tree's shadow had swung west, painting the porch in a lattice. I rang the bell. The door opened a crack. Ethan's eye appeared in the space like a moon. Dad, he said, swallowing. Hey, I said. Can I come into my home? He looked over his shoulder the way people do when they're checking for permission from something that lives behind them. The chain slid. He opened. He smelled like coffee and worry. Vanessa's resting, he said, which is the cousin of Vanessa is preparing. She had a rough night. She thought you. He stopped. Say it, I said. She thought you were overreacting, he said. You know how you get when you feel boxed in. How do I get? I asked gently. You get quiet, he said, and then you get strategic. It scares people. Only people who light the fire, I said. Ethan sighed. Can we not do metaphors? I don't speak firefighter. Fair, I said. Let's speak father and son. I stepped into the foyer. The house smelled like Vanessa's perfume, sharp and clean, with a sweetness under it like fruit that looks perfect, but tastes like the refrigerator it's been in too long. The camera above the hall still blinked red. Its angle was back to normal. Too normal. You move the camera back, I said. Ethan blinked. What? Nothing, I said. Show me the kitchen. We walked down the hall. The coffee maker burbled, a sound I've loved since the first time I woke up in a cold bunk to the promise of being human again. My mug sat on the counter. It said world's okayest dad because my sense of humor has always been less than elegant. Vanessa stood by the sink in my robe, hair slicked back, the kind of no-makeup face that announces itself as superior to makeup by being a lot of makeup. She turned slowly, like a stage cue. Good morning, Dad, she said. Sleep well. In my workshop, I said, like a king in exile. She pressed a hand to her chest. You chose that. We begged you to take the guest room after the cake made you emotional. 1. Urgent title search. Confirm current status. Look for any recorded deeds or liens. 2. Trust formation. Revocable living trust with you as trustee. Successor trustee named. 3. Notice to title companies. Flag any attempted transfers as disputed/fraud. 4. Temporary restraining order, if needed. Restrain interference with possession/records. 5. Preserve evidence, photos, texts, camera logs, witness statements. You came ready to move, I said. I've seen this movie, she said. The trick is to change the ending. She picked up the desk phone. Jill, put the title search on a rush for Tom's street address. Yes, full chain. And pull the recorder index for the last 30 days. She hung up and started filling blanks in a trust template. What's your middle name? Francis, I said, and she made a face. Don't look at me like that, I said. My mother likes saints. Mine like crossword puzzles, she said. We both got burdened. She typed, read back a paragraph for accuracy, and then looked at me over the screen. Who do you trust as a successor? Someone steady. Someone who won't get starry-eyed at the first shiny claim. Nora, I said without thinking. My neighbor. She sees everything and wants nothing. Perfect, Maggie said. We'll ask her. If she declines, we slot in my firm as a fallback, so there's always an adult in the room. She pointed her pencil at me. And yes, Tom, you're an adult. But adults get tired. Succession isn't an insult, it's a seatbelt. Her printer hummed. The trust pages slid out warm, neat, official. She clipped them, handed me a pen, and tapped signature lines with the efficient kindness of a nurse finding a vein. We'll notarize in-house. Jill will witness. You'll sleep better tonight. I slept fine, I said. In a shop chair. She answered without looking up. Sign. I signed. Jill came in, small and brisk, with a notary stamp like a tiny iron. I presented my driver's license. She pressed and rotated the stamp with a satisfying click. There, Jill said. You're slightly more bulletproof. Maggie's desk phone rang. She put it on speaker. Jill, said a man's voice from the back. Recorder index shows a notice of intent to transfer submitted yesterday afternoon. Unrecorded. Rejected for missing initial. Same names you mentioned. My jaw went tight. They tried to file while we were lighting candles. Rejected, Maggie said, lifting a palm. That's good news. It means they're sloppy, or greedy, or both. She glanced at me. We probably scared them by existing. Fear makes people fast. Fast makes people dumb. Anything actually recorded? Jill asked from the phone. Nothing new, the man said. Still clean. Title company hasn't touched it. Thanks, Joe, Maggie said and clicked off. She turned back to me. Okay, we have a narrow window. We're going to slam it shut. She slid a pre-drafted letter across the desk. This goes to the major title companies in our county. It puts them on notice that any deed purporting to transfer your house is disputed and should not be insured without direct verification from you or me. It doesn't stop crime, but it makes it harder to spend the proceeds. What about the door? I asked. What about being locked out of my own kitchen to drink my own coffee? We'll deal with possession next, she said. You live there. You have keys. You have a right to quiet enjoyment that does not include being treated like an intruder. Today, we build the paper fence. Tonight, we start taking your house back the civilized way. And if they won't be civilized? She smiled like someone who knows where the backup hose is. Then we'll use the heavy stream. By 10:30, we'd signed the trust. By 11, Maggie had emailed the notices. By noon, I was at the county recorder's office with a sealed envelope asking them to index a memorandum of trust against my parcel number. The clerk, a man with hair like dandelion fluff, checked my ID and tapped keys with 2 fingers. Okay, he said. Memorandum recorded. Here's your receipt. Want a certified copy? Yes, I said. He printed one, stamped it, and slipped it under the glass like a diner check. I thanked him. He nodded toward my parcel map on his second monitor. Nice corner lot, he said. Good bones. Best I ever built, I said. I walked out into the noon heat with paper proof that the house was no longer an orphan in the legal world. It now had an adult chaperone that wasn't swayed by birthday cake or soft words. I called Nora from the truck. You free at 3? I asked. I have a strange favor. If it involves a casserole, I'm out, she said. But if it involves justice, I'll wear lipstick. It's justice, I said. 3 it is, she said. I drove home with the trust binder on the passenger seat, and a pit in my stomach anyway. Paper is strong, but people can be reckless, and recklessness can shatter windows. I pulled into my driveway slow, scanning the house like a scene. No broken glass. No patrol cars. Good. The curtains were open in the living room, a small stage dressed in daylight. I could see the edge of my recliner. The maple tree's shadow had swung west, painting the porch in a lattice. I rang the bell. The door opened a crack. Ethan's eye appeared in the space like a moon. "Dad," he said, swallowing. Hey, I said. "Can I come into my home?" He looked over his shoulder the way people do when they're checking for permission from something that lives behind them. The chain slid. He opened. He smelled like coffee and worry. "Vanessa's resting," he said, which is the cousin of Vanessa, is preparing. "She had a rough night. She thought you." He stopped. "Say it," I said. "She thought you were overreacting," he said. "You know how you get when you feel boxed in." "How do I get?" I asked gently. "You get quiet," he said, "and then you get strategic. It scares people." "Only people who light the fire," I said. Ethan sighed. "Can we not do metaphors? I don't speak firefighter." "Fair," I said. "Let's speak father and son." I stepped into the foyer. The house smelled like Vanessa's perfume, sharp and clean, with a sweetness under it like fruit that looks perfect, but tastes like the refrigerator it's been in too long. The camera above the hall still blinked red. Its angle was back to normal. Too normal. "You moved the camera back," I said. Ethan blinked. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Show me the kitchen." We walked down the hall. The coffee maker burbled, a sound I've loved since the first time I woke up in a cold bunk to the promise of being human again. My mug sat on the counter. It said "World's Okayest Dad" because my sense of humor has always been less than elegant. Vanessa stood by the sink in my robe, hair slicked back, the kind of no-makeup face that announces itself as superior to makeup by being a lot of makeup. She turned slowly like a stage cue. "Good morning, Dad," she said. "Sleep well." "In my workshop," I said, like a king in exile. She pressed a hand to her chest. "You chose that. We begged you to take the guest room after the cake made you emotional." "The cake made me emotional," I repeated. "You were triggered," she said, adopting a therapist's coup. "We understand." "I'm 65, I said. "Not a landmine." She ignored the line. "We're glad you're here. We actually have news." She looked at Ethan, eyes flicking to cue him. "Tell him." Ethan's jaw twitched. "We've been looking into options," he said. "Downsizing. Simplifying. Houses are a lot. We could," he faltered. "We could help." Vanessa stepped in. "We found a lovely community 2 towns over. Independent cottages. On-site nurses. Your own garden. You keep calling this place your refuge, but refuges can become prisons. A fresh start could be healing." "I'm not injured," I said. She smiled, a sympathetic curve that said you are and don't know it. "Everyone deserves comfort, Dad." Comfort. The word landed like a penny tossed into a deep well. I didn't watch it disappear. I put my hand on the back of a kitchen chair and leaned like I might if I were chatting with a friend at a diner, instead of defending the grip of my life. "Here's my news," I said. "I met with Maggie this morning. We set up a trust. We notified title companies. We recorded a memorandum. Any attempted transfer of this property without my say-so is now a very complicated hobby." Vanessa's smile didn't flicker. It flattened. "You what?" Ethan's face went pale in stages, like a Polaroid developing in reverse. "Dad, why?" "Because you turned a lock that wasn't yours to turn," I said. "Because there was a quitclaim draft in my study last night that didn't put my hands on the pen. Because you told me goodnight in my own hallway." Vanessa laughed, a single clean note. "You misunderstood," she said. "That draft was a sample Maggie emailed us months ago when we asked about ways to manage future care. We were doing research. You snooped, found paperwork you didn't understand, and now you've made a mess." "She didn't send you that," I said. "She sent me options last year after my knee. I didn't choose that one." Vanessa's eyes cooled further. Details, she said. You're flustered. You conflate. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Can we all stop? Please? This is spinning. I watched him, my boy, flanked by two versions of adulthood. One that acquires and one that preserves, and I did what the job taught me. Ignore the noise. Watch the edges. Vanessa's tote sat by the pantry door. A corner of a document peered out like a shy child. The font looked county-issued. May I? I asked and reached slowly. Don't touch my things, she snapped. Too fast to be a choice. Then she caught herself. I mean, of course. But it was too late. The truth had flashed like a siren. I let my hand fall. We can do the polite version of this, I said. Or we can do the version where a judge uses words like coercion and undue influence. Vanessa crossed her arms. You're threatening me. I'm telling you where the exits are, I said, so we don't run into each other when the lights go out. Ethan stared at the counter, then at me. Dad, what do you want? I want breakfast, I said. In my kitchen. I want my grandchildren to eat pancakes here on Saturday. I want you to remember who taught you to ride a bike and who kept the lights on when your mother was sick. I want my keys to work at night. I want this house to be a place where comfort means respect, not silence. Vanessa lifted her chin. Respect is earned. It is, I said, and so are houses. We stood in a triangle of quiet. The coffee maker hissed like something alive. 3 o'clock, I said finally. Nora's coming over. She's agreed to be successor trustee. Maggie will stop by to explain what that means in small words. You're both invited to listen. Or you can go shopping. Your call. Vanessa scoffed. Ethan looked relieved and trapped at the same time. We'll be here, he said. Good, I said. One more thing. I pulled my phone and set it face down on the counter. From now on, if you say anything about my home, say it like a letter you're willing to have read in court. Vanessa smiled again, but this one had knives in it. Understood, she said. Anything else, Dad? Yes, I said. Please stop using my robe. At 2:45, Nora arrived in a flowered blouse that had seen a few school board meetings in its time. She hugged me in the foyer and squeezed my elbow like it was a doorbell that opened pride instead of rooms. Lipstick, she whispered, flashing it. For courage. Maggie came at 3 sharp with a satchel that had eaten many problems. We sat at the dining table. Me at the head, Nora on my right, Ethan across from me, Vanessa diagonally like a chess piece that moves any way she wants and expects the board to applaud. Maggie laid the trust binder open and pointed with a pen. Simple version, she said. Tom's house is now held by a trust he controls. No one can transfer it without his pen. If Tom becomes incapacitated, which I hope is a century from now, Nora steps in to manage the house for Tom's benefit under the rules he wrote. Not for her benefit. Not for anyone else's. For Tom. Questions. Vanessa kept her face blank. What's the point of involving neighbors? She asked. Isn't family supposed to handle family? Sometimes neighbors are the only ones watching the street, Nora said, sweet as lemonade left in the sun. And sometimes they have better manners. Maggie continued. We've also notified title companies that any deed purporting to convey this property is to be treated as suspect unless they confirm with me or Tom. That prevents sneaky filings from turning into insurable sales. Ethan exhaled. No one was selling the house, he said. We just, Vanessa thought. Vanessa thought comfort may control, Maggie said. It doesn't legally or morally. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Who do you think you are? The person who returns the cart to the corral so no one's bumper gets dented, Maggie said calmly. Now, final piece. Tom, this is your home. If anyone interferes with your possession, changes locks, denies access, we seek a temporary restraining order. A judge will be very interested in the word birthday paired with the word deadbolt. These are not terms that date well. I almost smiled. Vanessa didn't. She stood, gathering her tote. This has been enlightening, she said. Ethan, we're late. For what? He asked. Appointments, she said. Important ones. Involving my house. I asked. Involving our future, she said. Don't act like future is a dirty word. Only when someone tries to steal it, I said. She walked out with her sandals, making small, angry claps. Ethan remained, jaw working like he'd bitten an apple that insisted on being a stone. He looked at me, then at Nora, then at Maggie. I didn't know about any of this, he said, and I believed him in the way you believe a man who doesn't know how to lie with his eyes. I thought, Vanessa said. It was about safety, Dad. About? He stopped, lost. It still can be, I said. Just not by throwing me out of my life to make room for yours. He nodded, slow as a thaw. What do you need from me? Breakfast Saturday, I said. You bring the kids. I'll make pancakes. And until then, you keep your phone on. If any paper shows up at your house with my address on it, you send me a photo before you blink. He laughed a sad little laugh. Deal. Maggie packed up. Nora patted my hand. The room smelled like coffee and heat and the faint, clean bite of fresh ink on legal paper, the scent of a plan becoming real. After they left, I stood in the empty dining room and listened to the house. It creaked in the afternoon, like an old friend stretching. I ran my hand along the back of a chair and thought about how many dinners had wobbled there, how many elbows had worn the finish smooth. A sound tugged me toward the hallway, a faint scrape, the whisper of a drawer. I followed it to my study. The drawer to the desk, the one with my insurance papers, sat open. Inside, in a neat rectangle, lay a printed email. I picked it up. It was addressed to Vanessa, copied to Ethan. Attached was a PDF checklist bulleted like an invitation to theft. I stood very still and let the heat build in my chest, and then pass like a wave that chooses not to break. I set the paper down. I took a photo. I forwarded it to Maggie. Her reply came back before the text bubble finished breathing. Maggie said, perfect. We'll be waiting for them instead. I stared at that line until the period looked like a small moon. The front door opened and closed hard. Ethan's voice echoed down the hall. Dad, in here, I said. He came into the study with his face torn open by conflict. She scheduled something, he said. She said it was a routine review. I didn't, Dad, I swear. I know, I said. Sit. He sat. He looked 10 again and 40, and something in between that doesn't have a word because we've made so few words for men who are kind and lost at the same time. Listen to me, I said. I do not want to ruin your marriage. I want to rescue my home. Those two things only conflict if your marriage depends on taking what isn't yours. He swallowed. What do you want me to do? Tell the truth, I said. At the appointment. In your kitchen. To your wife. To yourself. Don't protect a lie because it wore the right clothes. He nodded. Okay. We sat a while. Two men in a room that had seen taxes and tears, births announced and obituaries folded. 100 small mundane victories that add up to a life. The house settled. Somewhere outside, a lawnmower grumbled. Time kept steady. My phone buzzed. Maggie, tomorrow, 10:15, fast title lobby. I'll be there with a courtesy smile and a stack of law. Bring your calm. Wear the shirt that doesn't apologize for being ironed. I thumbed back, got it. Then I added another message. Bring a copy of the trust. And a camera. Maggie, always do. That night, I slept in my own bed. I locked the door from my side, not to keep anyone out, but to remind myself that sometimes protection is a ritual you perform, so your nerves can rest. I laid the trust binder on the nightstand like a book I'd been meaning to read for years, and finally got around to. I listened to the grandfather clock count the hour, slow and faithful. The house said goodnight in the way old houses do, through wood and air and the quiet boast of a foundation that refuses to crack. In the morning, I shaved carefully, like a man meeting a judge or an old friend. I put on the shirt Maggie liked because the collar stayed where it should, and the blue didn't fight my eyes. I tucked the firefighter charm into my pocket. I poured coffee into the mug that admits my mediocrity with a grin. I flipped pancakes for my grandkids in my head and put the last one on an imaginary plate with butter melted just so. At 9:45, I locked the front door behind me. I set the alarm like always. On the porch, I paused and laid my palm flat against the wood, right where the deadbolt lives. We're almost through, I told the house. Maybe I told myself. Fast Title sat in a glass building where people who don't sweat make big decisions about people who do. The lobby had white chairs that looked like they preferred people to hover above them rather than sit. A mint bowl offered something that wasn't really candy. The receptionist smiled with her lips only. Maggie was already there, legs crossed, binder open, reading like she wasn't being watched by 3 security cameras and a plant. She looked up at me and nodded once. We're in the right place doing the right thing. At 10:28, Vanessa walked in on heels that made clocks nervous. Ethan trailed behind, a good man trying not to drown in shallow water. Vanessa's smile at the receptionist could have cut glass. "Appointment for 10:30, she said. "Property transfer review." "Of course," the receptionist said. "Right this way." She gestured toward a frosted glass door. The title officer, a neat man with the haircut of a person who enjoys rules, met us with a practiced brightness. "Morning," he chirped. "I'm Ryan. Let's get you all squared away." He ushered us into a conference room where a bowl of pens sat like a small forest. He had a stack of forms prepared and a checklist with many satisfying boxes. "Before we begin," Maggie said, standing so the sunlight caught the gold of her notary stamp like a sheriff's badge, "please note that any discussion about the property at 112 Maple is subject to this." She set the trust memorandum on the table and slid a copy across to Ryan. "And this." She placed the title company notice letter beside it. "And this." She tapped the county recorder receipt with its official stamp. Ryan blinked. His smile faltered a millimeter. He read, lips moving. He looked at Vanessa. "Is this accurate?" Vanessa's face did something small and hard to describe. It was not surprise. It was not shame. It was the look of a person recalculating a route in real time while pretending to enjoy the scenery. "That trust is new," she said, "irrelevant to prior intent." "Intent doesn't transfer property," Maggie said. "Deeds do, properly executed, with the grantor's knowledge and consent, which you did not have." Ryan coughed softly. "Well," he said, "given this notice, we cannot proceed with any review or preparatory work that presumes transfer. We can answer general questions, of course, but—" Vanessa stood so fast her chair sighed. "We're done here," she said. She grabbed her tote. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Ethan. She stared at a point above Ryan's head, as if staring at a horizon no one else could see. "Vanessa," Ethan said quietly. "Wait." She didn't. The door clicked behind her like a period. Ryan turned crimson in patches. "I apologize," he said. "We weren't aware." "You're fine," Maggie said, friendly now that the fire was out. "Flag the file. Note the trust. If anyone calls about it, you patch them to me." He nodded, grateful to have a script again. We left the room into air that felt cooler than physics allows. In the lobby, Vanessa stood by the window with her back to us. She was very still, the way a deer stands when it decides whether to bolt or charge. Ethan stood near, hands in his pockets, eyes on his shoes. I walked up and stood beside them both. The street outside shimmered with heat. Cars ticked by like seconds. "Vanessa," I said. She turned slow. Her eyes were dry and bright, like glass that hasn't yet decided whether it's a mirror or a window. "You won," she said flatly. "No," I said. "I refuse to lose." Her mouth tightened. "What now?" "Now we go home," I said. "We eat lunch like civilized people. We tell the truth to 2 children who deserve adults. We make rules that feel like respect. And we try very hard to remember that comfort isn't a weapon." She stared at me as if I'd spoken in a language that doesn't exist. Then she looked at Ethan. He looked at her and then at me. He took a breath that sounded like someone surfacing. "Let's go home," he said. We stepped into the heat together, the 3 of us. The sun lay across the parking lot like a sheet on a bed you're not sure you want to lie in. I could feel Act 3 assembling itself in the air ahead of us. Conversations that would scrape. A house that would have to decide who it belongs to in more ways than paper can say. And a quiet room where a judge sits with a pen and calls memory to the stand. At the truck, I paused with my hand on the door. I looked at Maggie, who gave me a small salute with her notary stamp. "Tomorrow," she said, Backstop hearing if we need it. We might, I said. We'll come straight, she said. And heavy. I nodded. Then I turned to the road that led home. The long curve past the hardware store. The corner where the maple throws shade like a blessing. The driveway that has learned the sound of my truck's engine like a dog learns footsteps. The day felt bright enough to burn, but I've stood closer to worse and walked out with my eyebrows intact. I slid behind the wheel and checked the mirror. The man looking back at me didn't need to be let in anymore. He had the keys. He had the paper. He had the plan. And the house, I swear, was already adjusting its heartbeat to match. Act 3, The Reckoning. I've sat in a lot of rooms where the temperature wasn't set by a thermostat. Courtrooms are like that. They run on heat made from fear, pride, and the sound a pen makes when it clicks before judgment. Ours had high windows that let the late morning sun fall in squares across the floor, like someone had laid out consequences in advance. The flag hung to the left of the bench, ironed flat. The seal on the wall looked at all of us with an expression that said it had seen every version of this story and still expected better. Maggie leaned toward me. 2 things, she whispered. Stay calm. Tell the truth. No flourishes. I don't do flourishes, I said. You do speeches, she replied. Save them for grandkids. Across the aisle, Vanessa sat too straight in a navy dress that meant business and forgiveness, depending on who read it. Her attorney, new polished, with a tie that cost what my first washer-dryer did, shuffled papers as if the papers might learn their lines if he kept touching them. Ethan sat beside Vanessa, hands clasped, shoulders curved inward. He looked like a man who kept telling himself that choosing one truth didn't mean betraying another. The bailiff called the case. The judge entered, gray hair in a tight cap, eyes like winter. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The air settled. The judge looked down at the docket. Thomas Francis, she said, and I endured the middle name like an old injury. Seeks a temporary restraining order and other relief regarding possession of the residence at 112 Maple, alleging interference by the respondent, Vanessa. She paused, checked the file. Francis by marriage, and any agents on her behalf. Counsel appearances. Maggie stood. Maggie Broder, for Mr. Francis. The polished tie rose. Daniel Grayson, for Mrs. Francis. The judge nodded. Good. We'll proceed on affidavits, brief testimony if needed, and exhibits. She looked at me. Mr. Francis, you understand you are under oath? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. Then tell me, briefly, why I am here. I'm here, Your Honor, I said, because on the night of my 65th birthday, the deadbolt on my front door was turned from the inside, because a quitclaim deed draft appeared on my desk without my request or consent, because subsequent actions suggested an intent to remove me from my home under the banner of comfort. Because comfort isn't supposed to lock a door against a man whose name is on the deed. Maggie touched my sleeve, brevity. I nodded and sat. Ms. Broder, the judge said. Maggie stepped to the lectern. Your Honor, Exhibit A. Photographs taken by Mr. Francis through the sidelight window, showing the interior hallway and the home camera repositioned to face the deed wall, later moved back. Exhibit B. The printed appointment email from Fast Title Incorporated sent to respondent scheduling a property transfer review for the following morning. Exhibit C. The recorded memorandum of trust Mr. Francis filed the very next day, securing the parcel. Exhibit D. A series of text messages where the respondent references, papers ready, and lock things down before he changes his mind. The judge skimmed. Counsel for respondent. Grayson rose. Mrs. Francis denies any coercion. There was no lockout. There was a misunderstanding at a late hour of an emotional family evening. The draft deed was research, a preliminary idea for estate planning to ensure Mr. Francis's future care. The appointment was informational. If Mr. Francis felt uncomfortable, we're sorry for the miscommunication. Miscommunication doesn't usually require a deadbolt, the judge murmured. Grayson smiled carefully. We dispute that characterization. Understood. The judge looked to Maggie. Ms. Broder, you're seeking a temporary restraining order preventing any interference with possession, and in order maintaining the status quo pending a more complete hearing. Yes, Your Honor, Maggie said. We're also asking for protective orders on documents, a bar on any title work absent written consent, and, if the court is inclined, an admonition regarding conduct that might influence other household members, including Mr. Francis's son. The judge tapped her pen. We'll hear from Mr. Francis briefly, and from Mrs. Francis. Then I'll decide whether to set this over for a longer hearing or grant interim relief. Maggie gestured me forward. I took the stand. The oath felt like good water. Mr. Francis, Maggie said gently, on the night in question, were you allowed to enter your home? Not right away, I said. I heard the deadbolt turn. When I asked to be let in, I was told good night through the door. Later, after I waited and knocked again, the chain came off and my son opened. In the moment that mattered, the moment a man measures himself by, I was outside my own life. Did you find documents in your study that you didn't place there? Yes, a quitclaim deed draft. I described the scene, the manila folder, the word quitclaim, the tote. When I pointed, I was told it was research, and that I was misunderstanding. Did you later discover an appointment email for a title review? I did. I described the printed email on my desk and read the subject line. It was scheduled for the next morning. If we hadn't intervened, we would have walked into a process designed to look routine. Maggie gave me a nod that said good, no speeches. Thank you, she said. No further questions. Grayson stood. Mr. Francis, you're a retired firefighter? Yes. You've always been, what's the word, vigilant? Alive, I said. Vigilant, he repeated. You have a habit of planning, of taking charge. Isn't it possible you misinterpreted perfectly benign steps your daughter-in-law was taking to help make your future more comfortable? Comfortable, I said, keeping my voice level, is a chair someone offers, not a door someone locks. So that's a no. That's a no, I said. He tried a few more angles, a suggestion that I'd overreacted, that I was suspicious by nature, that I'd weaponized legal tools out of pride. I kept my answers clean and small. When he was done, the judge looked at Vanessa. Mrs. Francis, do you wish to testify? She stood with a kind of righteous calm. Yes, Your Honor. Proceed, the judge said.
Let's
Vanessa
go
took
home,
the
he
stand
said,
and folded her hands like someone beginning a prayer. The three of us. I love my father lay across the parking lot like a sheet on a bed. The room tilt. You're not sure you want to lie in. Rooms do when someone starts with love as an argument in the air ahead of us. I saw him conversations that would forgetfulness, fatigue, a house that would have to decide about who it belongs to in more ways than paper can say. Too much, and a quiet room where a judge sits with a draft was an example. Calls memory to the appointment was a consult. At the truck, the deadbolt. I paused with my hand on the door. I looked at Maggie. Music gave me a small salute. If he felt locked out for a moment, tomorrow, regrettable, she said, but it wasn't intentional. Hearing if we needed. I would never hurt him. We might, I said. Maggie stood. We'll come straight. Mrs. Francis, and heavy. You sent a message to your husband the afternoon. Then I turned to the road that led home. Exhibit D, the long curve past the hardware store. The corner where the maple throws shade tonight, like a blessing. We can lock the driveway that has learned the sound of my truck's engine like a dog learns footsteps down. The day felt bright enough to burn. With pity. But I've stood closer to worse and walked out with my eyebrows intact. Meaning make decisions efficiently. I slid behind the wheel and checked the mirror. The hallway camera looking back at me didn't need to be let in anymore. Maggie asked. He had the keys. I don't manage cameras. He had the paper. Vanessa said. He had the plan. Who does? And the house. I don't know. Swear, was already adjusting its heartbeat to match. Maggie paused. Act 3. The reckoning. You emailed fast title. I sat in a lot of rooms. You scheduled the appointment. Where the temperature wasn't set by a thermostat. Yes, she said. Courtrooms are like that. They run on heat made from fear. Thank you. Pride. No further questions. The sound a pen makes when it clicks before judgment. I've seen some version of this. Let the late morning sun fall in squares across ambition and care, like someone had laid out consequences in advance. The law unwraps everything. The flag hung to the left of the bench. She tapped the file. Ironed flat. On this record, the seal on the wall. I prepared to grant temporary relief. With an expression that said it had seen every version of the story, and still Maggie's eyes glinted. Maggie leaned toward me. With the court's permission, she whispered, one short witness to clarify and tell the truth. No judge raised an eyebrow. I don't do flourishes. Maggie called Nora. You do speeches. Nora stepped forward in her best blouse, with her lipstick, grandkids, like a bright line across the aisle. Vanessa took the oath too straight in someone who has taken casseroles business and forgiveness for 30
depending
years,
on who read it,
and never
her
once
attorney
dropped the
new
lid.
Polished
Ms. Hill, with a tie that cost
Maggie
what my
said.
first washer-dryer
Did
did.
you receive a message
Shuffled
from
papers
Mrs. Francis
as
the
if the
morning
papers
after
might
Mr.
learn their
Francis's
lines
birthday?
if he kept touching them. Nora adjusted
Ethan
her
sat
glasses.
beside
Vanessa. I did not.
Hands clasped.
I received it the
Shoulders
night
curved inward.
9:12 p.m.
He looked like a man who
She
kept
sent it by
telling
mistake,
himself,
I believe,
that
choosing one truth.
What did it say?
Didn't mean betraying another.
Nora opened her
The
purse,
bailiff called
extracted
the
a
case.
printed
The
screenshot.
judge entered.
The
Gray
thing only
hair
people
and
who
a
still
tight cap.
iron pillowcases
Eyes like
do.
winter. And read. Everyone stood.
Moving ahead tonight.
Everyone sat.
He's sentimental.
The air settled.
Be prepared to
The
play the
judge
safety
looked down
card
at the
if he
docket.
resists.
Thomas Francis.
Nora looked
She
up,
said, and
it
I
went to me.
endured the middle name
I don't
like
think
an
I
old
was the
injury.
intended you.
Seeks a
I
temporary
replied
restraining
with a
order
question mark
and other relief.
She
regarding
unsent.
possession of the
But I
residence.
have the original on my phone.
Maple, cashed in
alleging
previews.
interference by the
Technology's a
respondent,
funny thing.
Vanessa.
Grayson's
paused.
tie darkened
Check
by
the
half
file.
a shade.
Francis
Objection
by merit.
foundation and any agents on her
Overruled.
behalf. The judge
Counsel
said,
appearances.
taking the page.
She
Maggie
read it.
stood, exhaled,
Maggie Broder
and handed
for
it
Mr.
back.
Francis.
Anything else, Ms.
The
Broder?
polished tie rose.
One last
Daniel,
item,
Your
Grayson,
Honor,
for Mrs.
Maggie
Francis.
said.
And her voice
judge
had
nodded.
that calm firefighters. Will
Get when
proceed
they've
on
already
affidavits.
found the hydrant.
Brief testimony
Respondent's
if
counsel
needed,
suggested
and
the
exhibits
deadbolt
was a misunderstanding.
She looked at me.
May I play
Mr.
10
Francis,
seconds of audio?
You understand you are
The
under
judge
oath?
glanced at the clock. I stood. 10.
Yes, Your
Maggie
Honor.
tapped her tablet. Then tell me,
A small,
briefly,
clear
why
recording
I'm here.
filled the room.
I'm here,
The sound
Your
of my
Honor.
porch lights
I
faint
said,
buzz, my
because
knock.
on the night of my
And Vanessa's
65th
voice
birthday,
on the other side of the
the
door,
deadbolt on my front
were
door
find at
was turned from the
midnight.
inside. Because
Then,
a quick claim deed
unmistakably,
draft
the
appeared
metal
on my
slide
desk
of the
without my
deadbolt
request
turning to
or
lock.
consent. The judge's
Because
pen
subsequent
stopped
action
tapping, suggested
Thank
an
you,
intent to remove
she said,
me from my
and
home.
the words
under
sounded
the
like
banner
a
of
gavel.
comfort. She turned to Vanessa. Because comfort
Mrs.
isn't
Francis,
supposed to lock a door
I believe
against
you
a
care
man
about
whose
your
name
father-in-law
is on the
in your
deed.
own way.
I also
Maggie touched
believe
my
you
sleeve.
attempted to leverage
Revenege,
the care
I
to take
nodded and
control
sat.
of his home,
Ms.
without
Broder,
his fully
the judge
informed
said.
consent. Maggie
That
stepped
ends
to the
today.
lectern. She
Your
looked
Honor,
at me.
Exhibit A.
Mr. Francis.
Photographs
the
taken
court
by
grants
Mr.
your
Francis
petition
through the side light
temporary
window.
restraining
Showing
order
the interior
effective
hallway
immediately,
and the home camera
no
repositioned
interference
to
with
face
possession,
the deed wall.
no changing
Later moved
locks,
back.
no
Exhibit
title
B.
activity whatsoever.
The printed
absent
appointment
your
email
written
from
consent
Fast
and
Title
Counsels
Incorporated sent
will set
to
a status
respondents
conference
scheduling
for 30
a property
days
transfer
out to make
review
sure peace
for the
has
following
learned
morning.
its manners. Exhibit C. She looked
The
back at
recorded
Vanessa
memorandum
and
of
Grayson.
trust.
Mr.
If
Francis
I see anything
files the
resembling
very next
pressure
day,
dressed up as concern,
securing the parcel.
I'll consider sanctions.
Exhibit D. And
A
Mrs.
series of
Francis
text messages
don't play
with
the
a
safety
respondent
card.
references.
When people
Papers
need
ready,
safety and
they
lock
lock
things
for it.
down before
They
he
don't find
changes
it
his
behind
mind.
deadbolts.
The judge skimmed.
The gavel came
Counsel
down.
for respondent.
A small sound really.
Grayson
but it
rose.
traveled through bone.
Mrs. Francis
We stepped into the
denies
hallway
any coercion.
where law becomes
There was no
hallway
lockout
air again.
There was a
Ethan
misunderstanding
leaned against the
at a
wall
late
like a
hour
man who
of
had
an
just
emotional
realized
family
bricks
evening.
are heavy
The draft
precisely
deed was
because they're
researched.
real. A
I'm
preliminary
sorry,
idea
Daddy said.
for estate
I should
planning
have.
to ensure
I should
Mr.
have heard you the
Francis's
first time.
future care. The
You just
appointment
did.
was informational.
I said.
If
That's
Mr.
what
Francis
matters.
felt uncomfortable,
Vanessa
we're
stood a few
sorry
feet
for
away,
the miscommunication.
holding her tote like a shield.
Miscommunication doesn't
She wasn't
usually
crying.
require a deadbolt.
She wasn't raging.
The judge murmured.
She was thinking.
Grayson smiled
and for the first
carefully.
time since she walked into our
dispute
lives.
that characterization.
I saw the thought wasn't about
Understood.
winning. The
It was
judge
about
looked
what
to
to
Maggie
do when winning had
Ms.
been
Broder.
redefined
You were
without your
seeking a
permission.
temporary restraining
Vanessa, I
order
said.
preventing any
She looked
interference
up.
with possession.
I meant what I said
and
at the
in
title
order
office.
maintaining the status
Lunch,
quo
truth,
pending a more
rules
complete
that
hearing.
feel like respect.
Yes,
Your
that
Honor.
invitation isn't
Maggie
a trick.
said.
It's
We're
a door.
also asking for
You can walk
protective
through
orders
it if
on
you want.
documents, or you
A
can
bar on
slam
any
another
title
one.
work
But
absent
be
written
careful.
consent.
Doors,
And
remember,
if the court is inclined.
She swallowed.
An admonition
nodded
regarding
once,
conduct that
and
might
left
influence
Grayson
other
murmuring
household
about
members,
long-term
including
strategies in
Mr.
the tone of a
Francis'
man
son,
who had just
The
learned
judge
not
tapped
all
her
strategies
pen.
are long
We'll
enough
hear
to
from
last
Mr.
from
Francis
morning to
briefly.
verdict.
And from
Maggie
Mrs.
tucked her
Francis.
tablet away.
Then I'll decide
Good
whether to
testimony,
set this over for
she
a
said to
longer
me.
hearing or
Minimal
grant
theatrics.
interim relief.
Judges like bricks.
Maggie gestured me forward.
I like
I
houses.
took the stand.
I said.
The oath
Good,
felt
she
like good
smiled.
water. Let's go
Mr.
home.
Francis.
We
Maggie
didn't
said
celebrate.
gently.
We went to the
On
diner
night
with the
in
wobbly
question,
table.
Were
and
you
ordered
allowed to
grilled
enter your
cheese.
home?
Because grilled
Not
cheese
right away,
is the
I
food
said.
of people
I
who
heard
have
the
had enough
deadbolt
drama.
turn.
For
When
when
I
I
asked to be let in,
Nora joined
I was
us
told
and
good
pretended
night through
not
the door.
to enjoy being
Later,
right. After I
Ethan
waited
came
and
late,
knocked again, slipped into the
chain
booth
came
across from
off,
me,
and my son
and
opened.
wrapped both hands
In the
around
moment
his
that
coffee,
mattered,
like
the moment
it
a
could
man
keep him
measures
from falling.
himself by.
What happens
I was
now?
outside
He
my
asked.
own life.
Now, I
Did
said,
you find
we do the
documents in your
boring work
study that you didn't
We
place
change
there?
the alarm code.
Yes.
We update the
A
password
quitclaim
on the
deed
camera
draft
to something no one uses.
I described
for anything
the scene.
else. The manila
We put
folder,
the original deed
the
in
word
the safe
quitclaim,
deposit box,
the tote,
and a copy
When I pointed
in 3 places.
I was told it was
We make
research,
Saturday pancake
and that
day
I was
non-negotiable.
misunderstanding. We rewrite
Did you
family
later discover
in
an
plain
appointment
English
email for a title review?
And Vanessa,
I did.
he said.
I
don't
described
know.
the printed email
I
on my
said,
desk,
which
and
is
read
what
the
men
subject
say
line
when they want to be honest
It was
more than they
scheduled
want
for
to
the
feel
next
wise.
morning.
If
People
we
come
hadn't
back from
intervened,
bad
we would have
plans if
walked
they were
into a
following
process
fear.
designed to look
If they were
routine.
following appetite,
Maggie
it's
gave
harder.
me a nod that
Either
said,
way,
"Good. No
she's
speeches.
not getting my house.
Thank you," she said.
Ethan looked down,
No
then
further
up.
questions.
I should have protected you.
Grayson
he said.
stood.
You should
Mr.
have listened to
Francis,
yourself.
You're a
I
retired
said.
firefighter?
It's the same thing most
Yes.
days.
You've always
He
been,
nodded.
what's the word, vigilant?
Eyes wet.
And blinked them
Alive, I
clear
said.
before the waitress
Vigilant,
returned with pie.
he repeated.
We ate
You
in
have
the
a habit
quiet
of planning,
that follows
of
a
taking
small
charge.
war you won.
Isn't it possible
without firing
you
a shot?
misinterpreted
Perfectly
perfectly
benign
The
steps your
afternoon light
daughter-in-law
fell through the
was
maple
taking
leaves
to help make your
and
future
printed
more
green
comfortable.
shapes on the porch. Comfortable.
I unlocked the door,
I said,
keeping my
deadbolt
voice
slid
level,
smooth, like
is
a
a
lesson
chair someone
learned.
offers.
Inside,
Not a door someone
the house
locks.
smelled like coffee and something
So
clean.
that's a no.
The absence of
That's
worry
a no,
has a
I
scent
said.
if you've lived
He
long
tried a
enough
few
to
more
recognize
angles.
it. We made a few
suggestion
changes
that I'd
right away.
overreacted. New
That I was
codes,
suspicious by
new
nature.
passwords,
That I
weaponized
took the camera
legal
down,
tools
and
out of
put it
pride.
back with my own hands.
I kept my answers
Angles
clean
set
and
where it
small.
had been before
When he
anyone
was done,
decided that walls
the judge
are
looked at
eyes.
Vanessa
At the study
Mrs.
desk,
Francis,
I closed
do
the
you wish to
drawer that had
testify?
held the appointment email.
She stood
and
with a
placed
kind
my
of
logbook
righteous
on
calm.
top. Open
Yes,
to the
Your
page
Honor.
where I'd written
Proceed.
I
The
added
judge
another
said,
line. Order granted. How steady. That evening, Ethan brought the kids over. They tumbled in with the unself-conscious joy of people whose measure of home is pancakes and the promise of a story before bed. We made grilled cheese again because you don't mess with a theme. We ate on paper plates because dishes feel like cord if you've had a day in one. Vanessa didn't come. She texted Ethan that she needed space. I respected that. Space is where good decisions sometimes go to stretch. I told the kids a story about 3 cats and a terrarium because I did. In fact, once carried that exact combination out of a smoky basement when a teenage science project met a forgotten candle. They laughed at the right spots. They asked if the turtle survived. It did. Most things do when people stop pretending they're not on fire. After the kids fell asleep in the guest room, Ethan lingered in the doorway, the way he did when he was little and trying to decide if he could ask for water again without breaking a rule. "Dad," he said. "Yeah, why were you so calm? Last few days." "I wasn't," I said. "I was exact." He smiled, the kind that looks like a boy solving his first real problem. "Maggie says you think like a hose." "She would," I said. "She's a hydrant with lipstick." He laughed, then grew quiet. "Do you think Vanessa? Do you think she meant to? I mean, I think she wanted the future to feel less scary," I said. "Some people think the way to do that is to hold everything. The house, the narrative, the locks." I looked at him. You can't hold everything and have a home. You can only hold your side of the table and trust the person across from you to hold theirs. He nodded. "I want that." "Good," I said. "Then build it." He kissed my cheek and went to sleep in the room he painted when he was 14, a shade of blue we fought about then and laughed about now. I sat in the study with the window open a crack and listened to the night. The clock chimed 10. The maple brushed the siding with its leaves and said a soft thing only houses and men who've learned to listen can hear. The next morning, Vanessa came by. She knocked. I answered. The porch light was off. It didn't need to test me anymore. She stood on the step without armor. No tote, no heels. Just a woman who had lost a game she hadn't realized was the wrong game to play. She looked past me into the hallway, at the deed frames, at the camera, at the chair where her husband had sat the night before with a daughter on his lap and a son sprawled on the rug, pretending to be a mountain. "I brought muffins," she said, holding up a bakery box like a white flag. I don't know if I'm the bad guy or the foolish one. Maybe both. "I'm sorry, Tom." I nodded. "Come in," I said, because a man can win in court and still choose kindness at his own door. She stepped inside. The house didn't groan. It didn't cheer. Houses don't do that. They just wait to see who you'll be. We ate muffins with coffee. She didn't try to redefine words. She didn't call control comfort. She asked questions with question marks at the end instead of periods. When she left, she took nothing but an understanding she hadn't brought. Weeks passed the way weeks do when you stop counting how many fights you avoided by holding your breath. The restraining order became less a sword and more a fence. The trust sat in the safe, boring and beautiful. Saturday pancakes returned with the kind of regularity that turns children into historians. Ethan changed small habits that mean everything. His phone stayed on,
His eyes stayed open. His promises grew a spine. Vanessa volunteered at the community garden, where the soil teaches you humility because it's not impressed by your reasons, only by your hands. One evening, late summer leaning toward fall, I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea and watched the maple let go of a single leaf, like a test balloon. The house felt not victorious, just right-sized, like a jacket you thought you'd outgrown, and then realized the lining had just come loose and needed a stitch. Nora called from her porch. "How's the kingdom?" "Constitutional," I said. She laughed. "Good. Remember, neighbors are just family who didn't get to vote." "I remember," I said. She leaned on the railing. "You ever going to put that picture in the frame you made?" I looked at the workshop window glowing warm in the dusk. "I think I know which one," I said. Later, I slid the photo into the oak frame, the one of my last engine company on the day I rang out, all of us squinting into sun, grief and pride sharing a cup. I hung it beside the deed frames. The wall looked like a conversation between what you work for and who you did the work with. Before bed, I wrote in the logbook, "Status, how steady. People learning. Lesson, comfort without respect is just a soft word for theft." I set down the pen and touched the firefighter charm in my pocket. Cool and familiar. You want a twist? Here's the only one that matters. I thought the fight would end with a verdict. It didn't. It ended with a rule. In this house, we don't use love to move locks. We use love to keep doors open. And if someone forgets, we remind them, not with shouting or shame, but with boundaries that speak fluent English. The clock in the hall chimed 11. It sounded like a heartbeat measured honestly, without hurry. I turned off the lamp, took one last look down the hallway, the frames, the camera, the chair, and whispered, "Good night," to the house that had remembered my name even when I had to go to court to prove it. Then I went to sleep, not comfortable, not triumphant, but something better at home.